Welcome friends to another Halo lore video. Today we look at the home of the Sangheili, aptly named Sanghelios. Despite them spreading out into the larger galaxy, a lot of their core identity is still based on what happens on this planet. Those that still live there during the time of the Covenant were guaranteed food and goods via the Writ of Union, which is given in exchange for military service. When the Covenant collapsed, the tribes of the Sangheili fell into disarray and war with each other to see who could come out on top. The planet itself is broken down into 5 distinct regions: Yermo, Tolvus, Vardma, Kepler, and Quivro, and large parts of the planet are covered in water. This is mixed with desert regions, which go deep into the continents. So basically, because of that, the Sangheili live on the coasts and islands, surrounded by steep mountain ranges, which provide protection against the storms when they come in that season. Now the planet and the extreme weather there, that's not really changed, despite the Sangheili having access to terraforming technology. This is because they had unfortunate interactions with seemingly malfunctioning foreign artifacts buried in the planet's mantle. So through that experience they have learned not to mess with their home planet. So let's go over a little history of Sanghelios and its interactions, of course, with the Forerunners and later the Covenant. The influence of the Forerunners runs deep on Sanghelios. Artifacts belonging to them can be found across the planet's surface. Many are inert, or the purpose is unknown or perhaps not understandable by the Sangheili. So they avoid them, they don't meddle with them. But they've become places of pilgrimage and veneration, with sanctuaries and temples being built in those locations. As part of the Forerunners' plan, after the species' introduction as part of the conservation measure, the Sangheili were then driven by science and religion. They then worshipped the Forerunners as gods, and their machines as very sacred artifacts. When they first met the Covenant, Sanghelios was used as the primary seat of governance. Its repositories would be used for fuel for their growing empire. After its fall, unrest arose. Major population centres were ravaged. Some fled to the moons of the planet. That was until the Swords of Sanghelios, led by the Arbiter Thel Vadam, rose to calm things down and take charge. They've helped re-establish the Sangheili people, but their desire to forge bonds with humanity have drawn some criticism from others. So we mentioned the moons of Sanghelios. They're called Kikost and Suban. They have been settled for quite some time, but the Sangheili protect what is already there, its natural beauty. But there are immense city-states there that sprawl over the surface of the planets. Suban in particular is worth a small mention. It has exotic, metastable crystals that are used for needle-based weaponry. It was a safe harbour for either side during the Blooding Years, and was also low on the priority list for Katana when she tried to subjugate those on the planet. But after Katana came along, after her demise, there was a resurgence of attention to this moon. Being the only known source for the crystals, several ambitious factions have sought to capitalize on it, destabilize the security established there, and lay claim to the crystals for the weaponry. The Swords of Sanghelios have offered support to protect high-value mining sites, but it's been a battle ongoing. Causing further complication, there are several important armories there that served as a vital fountainhead in the supply chain for the Covenant war machine. As the unrest has grown, and political and military powers continue to shift, loyalties that have been established have been tested, and allegiances shattered. So this creates somewhat of an uncertain future for Saban, the place that was once considered a low priority. Both moons have also served as somewhat of a cultural touchstone. Saban has helped preserve pre-Covenant Sangheili faith. An example of this is the Spire of Miatistina. It is fabled to serve as a spiritual convergence point between the worlds of the ancient gods and the celestial namesakes, the Urs, Feed, and Juri. As part of the early treaty set up with the Sangshayum, Orthodox Lacuna monks and select priests were allowed to observe ancient practices at the spire, This agreement was rarely honoured in the longer term, but has found a resurgence with the fall of the Covenant. The other moon, Kikost, actually serves as the primary spaceport for the Earth system during the era of the Covenant, and is still a major hub of commerce now. During the great unrest throughout Sanghelios history, a group of keeps have begun to lay the groundwork for an effort to establish a discrete colonial independence for this moon. The response to this idea has become polarizing, for both those in the homeworld and that of those on the moon itself. When the created incursion of the local system manifested in 2558, the widespread loss of communication and logistics infrastructure almost immediately inhibited any further coordination on Kikost and its independence efforts, though the desire still remains strong amongst key parties. And the final thing worth mentioning are the hunting grounds of this moon. There are several massive wildlife game reserves that have been long established to both underpin broader conservation efforts and encourage the preservation and proliferation of key Sangheili cultural practices, many that go back to the earliest times of the race. Both individuals and those in packs hunt there and use what they find in a variety of rites and customs, both practical and more ceremonial aspects. Animals that can be hunted being such as the hulking skier, which appears to be a dragon on 4 legs roughly, and others like venomous 2-meter long amphibians that dominate the reserve. Perhaps more sought after, however, are the massive expanses scattered across the mountain ranges of Shimlin, where the deadly and magnificent Helios squirrel can be found. These were originally native to Sanghelios itself. The Helios squirrel found its number dwindling due to commercialised hunts favoured by the wealthy and indulgent Sangheili. With that last little bit of information, I turn things over to you before ending the video. What do you think to this information about the moons of Sanghelios and how they've influenced the main planet below? Do you think the Arbiter has been a positive influence in the area of the Sanghelios? Or would you prefer for them to still be under the boots of the Covenant and the Sangheili? As a big fan of the Arbiter, I think he's the man for this job. But now please let me know what you think. Is there anything else you'd like to see on the channel in relation to the Sangheili? I know I'd like to do a lot more videos on them, delving into the different arbiters, etc. Let me know your thoughts. Comment down below.